us until the. Okay. Awesome. I'm sorry. I have to throw my little doggy out of the room. So, so hello, welcome. Look at you all on the videos. I see you all on the videos.
Yeah, I guess this is my
my
second.
Doing?
Well, this is, I guess, my second official podcast appearance. So I'm not so much on I'm not making the podcast circuit yet, but it's truly an honor to be invited on this. Have you guys actually put out any videos yet?
We start putting everything out the first and during sleep awareness month, which is March 1st. So they'll be coming out on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then after that, it'll be once a week. So all these recordings will be to honor those who are in sleep. So that's why we wanted you on here. So, and Kelly, go ahead, Kelly. I'll let you talk first and I'll talk.
Yes. Well, thank you, Kevin. I'm really excited to have you on this podcast for several reasons. One, Donnie doesn't know this because I don't even think I told her, but back in 2023, Kevin messaged me on LinkedIn when I was really just on it, and I don't really like to be on social media. And he reached out to me and said he saw us on the Sleep Tech Talk podcast with Kier, and that he really thought we did a good job, and he appreciates what we're doing. And the other reason why I want to have Kevin on, Kevin, I don't know, I think you may know this, maybe you don't. But I love how you're always so positive on LinkedIn, because there's introverts like me and others on LinkedIn that may not necessarily want to be on social media because of our personalities, but there's things we do want to put out or just find out who else is doing things in our field. And you always like it or you comment, and I feel like that gives a boost to us introverts to give us the courage, I guess, to, it's okay. I'll put some more stuff out. So I just want to say that you're always positive. I love it. Thank you for promoting our field. And the other reason, secondly, I want to congratulate you because I don't know if Donnie knows, but you just won Sleep Tech Talk podcast.
Sleep Technologist of the Year.
So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yes. It was an honor.
Well, you
Do you have a trophy there? Are you holding up a trophy?
Yeah, the trophy. Yes.
Oh, they actually send something?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. My wife was like, wow, that's great. What are you going to get?
Yeah, you get a mug and a trophy.
Yes. Now we say that and watch them not get it, but you should get something. And then before we throw this at you, I do want to say I loved your article with the sleep intel. He wrote an article, Don, I don't know if you saw that. It was about awareness, role of patient education and sleep apnea treatment. But what I loved was you put, patients don't know what they don't know, and you can change that.
Awesome.
So true, right?
Notes.
Yes.
You want to take away and tell us about yourself?
Wait a minute. Before you do that, I need to go ahead and give you your props. The one reason that we're doing this podcast, we just did a recording just about 30 minutes ago, and they were like, okay, so I'm sorry I talked too much. And it's like, no. He said, well, this is your podcast. I said, no, it's your podcast. The reason why we're doing this is there's so many amazing people out there. They're doing some amazing things, and it may just be in a small little corner compared to what somebody else is putting out there, but the significance, the change that is happening in their space because they're there, that's why you're here. Because the changes that you are making, just your little self, that's amazing. So we want to honor you to be with us. So thank you so much. We appreciate you for coming on. So now you can go ahead and talk.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, with all those accolades, I don't know how I'm going to leave this room. My head has gotten so big.
Well, it's all true.
I do appreciate it. And, Kelly, actually, you had said about my positivity on LinkedIn. That is my main intent, is to lead with positivity and to build people up. And you're right, by commenting, by liking, all of that amplifies and encourages people to continue to do more. And, it kind of hit me. I don't know, I guess it would have been like maybe 2022 or 2023. I was chatting with, a fellow sleep technologist who somewhat active on LinkedIn, and we were sharing that same sentiment about, how important it is to, that's what it's about. It's a community where we can all help and build each other up. There's just not room or time, and nobody really cares to hear anybody like, bashing competition or, just amplifying themselves and how cool they are, right? It's about like, like giving it back and sharing with others, that positivity. So I appreciate you saying that, because I always do say that is my main intention on LinkedIn, is to be positive and encouraging to others that are out there. So thank you. Um, well, I guess I can start by just kind of sharing a little bit about myself and how I got into sleep technology and like my career and how it's gone and all of that. I'll give the very condensed version of 25 years. I think, I think like so many of us, we were, at least of my generation, it was like on the job training. And for myself, it was kind of a way to a means. I was still like kind of figuring my way out through the world and what I was going to do. And, I looked at running sleep studies and being a sleep tech as a good job while I was figuring things out. And I was still in school, and my goal was to go on to medical school at some point. And that uh, didn't happen that way. It was like I love to quote the great Robert Frost in the beautiful poem "The Road Not Taken," and he mentions in there that way leads on to way. And what is meant by that is like those little conscientious steps that we take in life that make it further and further to go back, or harder and harder to go back to that fork in the road. And with sleep technology, that's kind of what happened for me. I'll be honest, like the first 5 years I was in the field, maybe 5 or 7 years in the field, I had like one foot out the door, and I didn't necessarily have my life together. I was kind of a wayward child, if you will. And, it wasn't, so something happened at like that year 7 mark for me, where I ended up kind of having just a reawakening of priorities. And, I found kind of some deep meaning in life. And you could say I had a spiritual experience of sorts that, was a personal thing, which uh, created this shift in my total outlook in life. And it was from that point on that I really started applying everything to gratitude. And that's, how I try to live my life today, is like having that attitude of gratitude. And, so at that time I was probably about maybe 4 or 5 years in at the University of Chicago. I was running overnight studies, and I just had this complete shift in perspective on life. And it trickled through everything I did. And at that point, I just started being a better teammate, a better coworker, a better employee, better son, a better brother, you name it. All those titles I wore, I was greatly improving in. And that ended up leading into some promotions at the University of Chicago. So I was then like maybe about my 10th year in or so, I was promoted to lead day tech. And then eventually I was the chief technologist there for several years before I left. But I refer to that time as really my training ground and my education in sleep medicine, sleep technology. The University of Chicago is like one of the meccas for sleep medicine, right? I mean, it's where REM sleep was discovered. It was where Dr. Bill Dement came from. I had so many great and amazing mentors there, by, the physicians that I worked with that truly treated me like a colleague. And, they valued and asked for my input on things, to the research that was being done there, to my peers, the fellow sleep technologists there that I was learning from every day. And so it really kind of just set me up for, this truly is a career path, right, in sleep technology. And it was a little bit later on. I'd say it was maybe about 2015 or so. I think was when the first batch or cohort of for the CCSH credential came out, and I sat for that. I saw the importance of that as like continuing to kind of look ahead with my career in my career path. And that, so I ended up getting that credential. I believe it was 2015 was when I became CCSH.
What's
And
your
then
number?
eventually
What's your
for
number, Kevin?
CCSH, yeah, I'm not sure. It's that's a good question.
Is it
I
what,
it's
05?
no, but I know it's in the like maybe mid to late 50s. So
Okay.
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it was pretty early on. I my first I guess exposure to that too was the AAST was doing a conference. Believe it was in Louisville that year, or maybe it was the year before, and I
Kelly, didn't you
attended
go to
that.
that one? The
I was
CTE?
in Louisville for the CSC
Yeah.
with
CSC.
Catherine
Yep.
Hansen.
Yes.
Oh, we
Yes.
were at the.
It's
We were
hilarious.
there together, but I didn't know who you were, and you didn't know who I was.
There were a lot of people there. I
Yeah,
Small
mean,
it
that
world.
that first year there it was a good turnout. I think, the whole idea of a new credential, it was exciting, right? And there was still very new, we were hoping like, okay, maybe there could be some kind of reimbursement model for this. There was still a lot of unknowns, but I was in. I saw the value of it, and my day to day at that point was kind of working as that physician extender anyway. I was at that point. I was off overnights, and I was, primarily working in the days. So it was good. And then I think that was maybe in the summer or spring, and then I think I sat for that test maybe that winter or maybe that later that year, the next year. I forget exactly how that all timed up, but I was one of the first. I was part of that first kind of batch, and then later on, I ended up, years later, I was part of the instructor team for that course when they were doing it here in Chicago through the AAST. So kind of came full circle there. But at some point, I'd say maybe 2017, 2018, I had some involvement with like industry people, and, people started planting ideas of like, hey, would you ever consider like a job or career in sales, and so on and so forth. So I ended up, leaving the walls of the sleep lab and venturing out to the field of dental sleep medicine and taking a job as the clinical director for I think they're the nation's largest dental sleep medicine clinic. They're known as Midwest Dental Sleep Center. So they're primarily, I mean, they're based here in Chicago, but they have 5 office locations. That's all they do is dental sleep medicine. It's a referral based practice, meaning that they're not doing any direct to consumer marketing. It's all like through relationships with providers. And I don't know if you guys remember a device called the Matrix titration system. It was made by a company called Zephyr. No?
No.
All right, so I'm gonna blow your mind here. So there was this device launched, I want to say maybe 2012, 2013, and it kind of hit the Illinois market in 2014. And what it was, so the Zephyr Matrix system, it was a remote control mandibular advancement titration device. So what would happen is, if you can picture this, I'm going to do my best to describe it. It's like temporary trays that slide back and forth, okay? And there would be like a little motor connected to the one end of it, and the patient would wear this temporary device in their mouth through the night, and the tech from their control room, they would make incremental changes on the protrusive position of the mandible during the night. So while the patient was sleeping and they would see a hypopnea or an apnea or snoring occurring, they would increase on the protrusive position of this device. And what it did was it allowed you to, in real time, to adjust the patient's mandible to, number one, see if they're going to be a responder to oral appliance therapy. And then number two, if they are a responder, at what position are they best treated at? So I always used to say too, like no matrix test was a failed matrix test, because even if the patient did not respond to therapy, they knew it. They knew it before having to invest maybe a couple $1,000s in a permanent device. So that was kind of, I tell that story because that was really my intro to dental sleep medicine, where I started seeing that as a viable option. Before, I had a biased opinion because I'd see those patients come into the lab, they'd bring their appliance, you'd have to go in and like wake them up to make the advancements during the night, and then say, okay, now you got to go back to sleep. You'd be waking them up out of REM sleep and you hope that they would pop back into REM sleep, which never happened. So, and then even the patient selection that was coming back into the lab for that type of study were those that were kind of struggling with therapy, right? Because the patients that were like doing great at home, they were feeling good. They're like, why do I need to come back into the lab to have this study done when I'm sleeping great? I feel great. My wife's telling me, or my husband's telling me I'm feeling great. And, why spend all that money to go back in and have something validated that I know and I feel is benefiting me? So there is, I think, a selection bias that naturally occurs in those scenarios. And with the matrix device, it kind of bypassed that because you were doing this on the front end. So in real time, it was really cool because you'd see as the protrusive position was changing with these patients, you'd see that apnea go from an apnea to a hypopnea. And then with further protrusion, that hypopnea completely resolve and maybe just a snoring there. And it was like, wow, okay, this was great. So the University of Chicago was the first lab in the state of Illinois to have a matrix device in it. And I became kind of like an expert on it. And I started working with Midwest Dental while I was still at while I was still at the University of Chicago, to be like a subcontractor for them to help install and train techs how to use this device in other sleep labs throughout the Chicagoland area. And then that's kind of how I got into that dental sleep medicine position. So my role initially was like clinical director with program development as it pertains to the matrix.
So
So,
I have a question. So was it covered by insurance? How was,
yeah,
how, oh, it was.
the
What was the
test was
code?
covered.
What was the code?
95810.
Look
So
at it.
not a titration.
Look at it rattle off.
Yeah.
Well, oh, wow. Okay. Well, goodness. That is
So
amazing. I never heard of Kelly, you haven't.
No, they used to titrate in the lab, like he was talking, but not with that device. Was that device everywhere or?
no, it was like Kaiser Permanente was using it briefly. I believe Stanford. There was like some
Okay.
select locations. I'll say it. I'd say so. Two things happened that I think were the demise of Matrix. Number one, and I think this is a big reason, was getting the dentist in the sleep center to play nice in the sandbox, right? There's a lot of coordination back and forth. And so to have like a really seamless program, you needed to have really good communication and a good workflows and good operations from the dental side into the sleep lab. And so I think that just in itself is a challenge with
Yeah.
dentistry and sleep. So
Mhm.
I think that was maybe probably the biggest one. But then the other one that was kind of the knife in the heart was the insurance companies starting to push home sleep testing, right? Because it was right at that time, at least here in Chicago, where we saw United Healthcare denying in-lab studies. We saw Aetna Cigna, all the, a lot of the bigger commercial payers start declining in-lab studies. And I think that ultimately was probably the end of that program, or that device. We kept it going till 2020 here in Chicago. And the final knife in the heart was COVID. So when that happened, Zephyr had already declared bankruptcy and went under. So the practice that I was working with, they had bought like there's special trays that you needed, and like these devices, and they had purchased those from Zephyr when they went out. But it was COVID that really kind of put the final nail in the coffin there.
That's sad, because that's a really, I kind of wish it would come back, because I think it'd be very helpful. Because I just had someone, she said she's Medicare, and she said she's paid $8,000 for oral appliance, and I was like, $8,000, because I really didn't even know what the prices are, and that would have been helpful. And she doesn't really like it. And I thought what you just said is like, man, that would have been nice if she was able to try something like that ahead of time.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like, like for a patient, although like this temporary device, it definitely doesn't meet the comfort and fit of a permanent device. It does give that patient somewhat of an idea of what it's like to sleep with something in your mouth during the night, right? So we would see in some cases patients would be like, no, I just can't tolerate this. And then, they knew they had an answer at least, right? It was really, it wasn't perfect by any means, because you have night to night variability, and you're still like the in-lab procedure can impact things, but it was an additional tool that was, I think, just putting my tech hat back on, my sleep technologist hat, it woke me up to the dental sleep medicine and their place in treating patients, because I didn't buy into it. Like I told you, I had that kind of biased opinion, and I can tell you guys, like I've made it my mission since then, that when I speak at national and state and local conferences, and oftentimes techs will tell me, because I've spoke on dental sleep medicine quite a bit, or alternative therapies for sleep apnea, and techs will be like, yeah, I just don't believe in dental sleep medicine or oral appliance therapy. And I'm just like, no, like, and I do my best to kind of sway them back to reality of like, oftentimes what it is too, it's like a tech, they have this bad experience with these patients, this biased, I think the biased patient selection that happens, but then also a medical director in their lab who's just not a fan of it. And, I just say, if you don't believe it, then do you believe in the AASM? Because the AASM believes in it. They have joint clinical recommendations for oral appliance therapy. So there's a ton of research, a ton of data out there that shows the importance and the role that dentists play in treating and managing OSA patients. So
yeah, today we we call it boot camp at the hospital, where I train nurses and care partners. Every month they rotate through new, or they have to do it annually. So I at least see them once a year. And I was telling them about an oral device, and they were like, what? And they didn't know those things exist. That's one thing I love about being able to teach them, because they see the Inspire, the Remedy, the oral device, the Excite OSA, the different treatments that are out there. It's just not CPAP, and just to educate them about that. But also, I always say to them, I said, a dentist will take your money. I said, you have to ensure that they are board certified in sleep. And that's the key.
100%.
And I say that like 3 or 4 times. I said, do you understand what I'm saying? Any dentist will take your money to make you a mouthpiece, but it will not be effective for sleep apnea. So yeah, it's something I can see why tech, because we've seen it happen. Our patients will come in and you're like, where'd you get that from? A dentist made this from me. What? Okay, well, go ahead and put it in your mouth. We're going to see if it works. Wake him up. I'm so sorry. We got to put CPAP back on you. What? I spent $8,000 on this and it's not working. So that's where that comes from, I'm sure, because it's happened to me a couple of times. I'm like, what
Yeah.
is this dentist doing?
Yeah. No, you hit it. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because, finding a dentist who is a board diplomat, right? A diplomat
Mhm,
in dental sleep medicine is so
mhm,
important because any dentist can make an appliance. The magic really happens after the appliance is delivered, right? Assuring that the patient is titrating the appliance out, checking in on symptoms, how the patient's doing, assuring that you get objective data afterwards, by completing a follow-up sleep test. Those things are really kind of the secret sauce in success for dental sleep medicine is that
I,
what
I
happens after the patient's
Well,
delivered.
Kevin, I think that's the secret sauce that we're still experiencing at 30 something years in sleep, that
Mhm.
still needs to be happening in every treatment that's out there, because that's what we're
For
still
sure.
seeing. Me and Kelly were talking about earlier. I mean, how long have we been in sleep and we're still seeing the same things? DME still not taking care of our patients. Are you kidding me? Well, who's
Mhm.
who's who's taking care of that? Because I can't take care of that too. So we got to figure out something. But yeah, it is that follow through. That's why what we do is so important.
I'm a big proponent of education, patient education. And, Kelly referenced the latest article I wrote. And in there, one of the points I make is this mindset on education and patient education. And oftentimes it is looked at as administrative burden. We need to start looking at it as clinical intervention. That's the way education should be delivered with that type of spirit of it. This is a clinical intervention that I'm providing. It's not this burden that I have to check a box, right?
There's something that you said earlier when you were talking about your transformation and why you come the way you do on LinkedIn. And if all of us would just come in, I like this when I'm talking to the nurses and the staff, it's about working in excellence. And one thing I
Mm,
tell them, I said, I need you to stop doing it. I need you to be it. And what you described, what you do, you're being it. You're not doing it. And what I think I tell them is
mm,
when you're doing it, you get tired. Anything
mm,
you do, you get tired. But when it becomes who you are, you're being it. So no matter what room you step in, if you're talking to the patient, you're being kind. You don't have to do it. You're being kind to every person that you meet, even a stranger, because that's who you are. It's a being. And I think that's one of the things we forget in healthcare because we get so, you know how it is. We don't have enough staff. You got people coming in half doing the job. There is no accountability everywhere. It doesn't matter. It's everywhere now, but should never affect what you bring to the table. And that's what I try to tell them, especially when they come in sleepy. I tell them, this is what I say, ain't nobody paying you to be tired. I said, that's what PTO is for. I said, when you come here tired, what you're saying to your colleagues is, I need you to take over for me because you
mm.
can't fully be there for them or for the patients. And I think that we all need to take responsibility, even if we see someone else not doing what they're supposed to do, that has no effect on us being who we are and working in excellence. And what you were describing earlier, that's exactly what you're doing. You're working in excellence, and that's your bar. And you're not going to lower it because somebody next to you doesn't want to stand up to you. Just as I tell Kelly all the time, if you ain't calling my name, I ain't gonna answer. So
Mm.
if they're this low, I'm gonna let you be who you want to be. I don't need you to change. But what you will not do is change who I am. So keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job.
No, that's right. I agree 100% with everything you just said. Thank you. Yeah, so
Is he blushing or something? I think he's blushing a little bit.
I went from this big head to now a big red head.
Is
Oh
that why
boy.
you're leaning back? Is getting a little heavier?
No, no. Thank
No,
you.
honestly, that's one reason we're doing this. We want people to know that they're doing amazing things, and you got to do it as God tells me all the time. You got to do it without applause. Just be it.
Mm,
Just do it without applause. I'm not looking for you to
yeah,
give me a pat on the back. I don't even need to tell you
yeah,
to
yeah,
tell me I'm doing a good
yeah.
job. I'm just going to work in excellence and do my part to be the light. And that's what you're doing out there on LinkedIn. You are being the light.
Thank you. Yeah, no, humility is key, right? And it's funny when it's always a difficult subject to talk about humility because when you talk about it, you start becoming prideful sometimes. But yeah, no, it's for sure. In knowing that, my small part in it, and I'm a very deeply religious person, so I do give all credit and glory to God. So,
Mhm.
that's the way I roll. So.
Exactly. We can tell.
Yeah,
Go
no,
ahead,
it's
Kelly.
it's it's yeah. Did you have
Go
No,
ahead,
I was
Kevin.
gonna say, after, so Kevin didn't just do oral appliance, and you went
yeah.
into, was it Dr. Lullaby next?
Yeah, what I was gonna say is I kind of ran the sleep medicine gauntlet, the whole gauntlet. I went from, I've done research, I've done clinical, I've done dental sleep medicine, I've done behavioral sleep medicine with Dr. Lullaby. And so that's kind of where my journey went next after Midwest Dental was I ended up hooking up with a former colleague from the University of Chicago, Dr. Lisa Medaglia, dear friend. And she was just reaching out, just wanting some, just asking some questions. She had just received a seed grant through the University of Chicago to kind of officially launch Dr. Lullaby. And basically, what Dr. Lullaby is, and the reason for its existence, is it's to break access to care that there is for the lack of access to care for insomnia treatments or behavioral sleep medicine treatments, right? So, you guys probably have a clinical insomnia specialist that works with WellStar. And I can tell you that anybody who has an insomnia specialist in their program, they know that those schedules fill up very quick. Here in Chicago, there's a number of programs that have insomnia specialists working in their program, and all of those insomnia specialists generally have at least a 6 to 9 month wait time. And it's because those appointments, they just fill up quick. It's the nature of that treatment, right? Because it's usually 6 to 8 different visits that are weekly. And there's only so much time on a person's schedule. And then on top of it, there's not many board certified insomnia specialists out there. I used to know that number pretty good. I believe when I was with Dr. Lullaby, it was right around 200. And I don't think that's changed all that much. So really with Dr. Lullaby, the goal was number one, training and getting qualified providers, training them on behavioral sleep medicine, but then scaling it so you'd have this virtual platform that had tech enablement, so some features within an app, in a subscription app that would allow the patient to be able to go through cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia virtually, right, through telemedicine. But you had these kind of digital enhancements that also were led by a clinician that had some training in delivering behavioral sleep medicine. And I'll tell you, when we were talking, we were sitting there talking, me and Dr. Medaglia, and I'm thinking, when she offered me to come on to direct business development for her, I'm like, all I need to do is make a few phone calls and the orders are just going to start flying in because there's such a big need for it, right?
Mhm.
And it was so interesting because everybody I talked to, and I do the pitch because we accepted insurance, we did have self-pay as well, and that's kind of currently still their model. But there wasn't a single pitch that ever ended with like, this is great. That didn't ever, no, I should say that never ended with, well, I getting twisted in my words here. They always ended very positively, like, this is fantastic, blah, blah, blah. And I would be like, man, I hit that one out of the park. But then sure enough, it would be like, all right, I'd wait a week, wait 2 weeks, no referrals coming in. And what I realized was like behavior change is very difficult even for providers, right? You're giving them this nice tool, this nice alternative option. And like to use that and accept that tool could be very challenging because it's kind of breaking out of their current way of practicing medicine. And also, I think there's a lot of other factors like trust and maybe education. Maybe they heard kind of like the big picture thing of what I was pitching, but really didn't understand a lot of the nitty gritty of how the program worked. And then when they're bringing it up to their patients, maybe these questions would come up and they didn't have the answers to them. So, it was an amazing opportunity to learn. And it was my first job as full-time sales. And I really, really enjoyed it. I had some great success throughout the country. And I'm just very grateful and excited to see her continued success with that company. I continue to root her on. We stay in contact. It didn't work out. Startup life is tough. As you guys probably know with your venture, what you guys are doing, it takes a lot of takes time, and a lot of hard work. And I ended up actually my departure from there was to actually go back to Midwest Dental and work as their kind of leading their sales and marketing department full time instead of like being clinical director and involved in clinic. I was out 100% of the time on the road. So they asked me to come back, and I accepted. So
Okay.
yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead, Kelly.
Huh?
It's
We have a
5
few.
minutes.
We have a few more minutes left. I do want to ask you something. Well, actually, I'll ask you two questions. One is, where do you see the sleep field going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I do think about it often. I do think so. In the next 5 years, I think access to testing is going to be more and more readily available. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in our space, right? We have more treatment options than ever before. I think the biggest thing that we can all agree on here is that biggest change that I've seen in my 25-year career is awareness of the importance of sleep, right? Like people know that they need to sleep, the importance of sleep. And there's just
Mhm.
an awareness. There's an awareness not only of the importance of like getting a good 8 hour sleep or, that full night's sleep, but people are aware of like what obstructive sleep apnea is. That wasn't the case 25 years ago when I started. People were like, wait, what do? You watch people sleep at night? That's just weird. And then that transformed into, oh, I'd say like maybe 7 years after that, people were like, oh, you do sleep studies like sleep apnea. And then that changed to like, oh, that, yeah, I've heard of that. That's like CPAP that nobody wears, right? So there just was this gradual shift in the awareness in the general public, and now there's just more options, right? There's two different hypoglossal nerve stimulators, another one that's going to be coming to market somewhat soon. There's pills that are being FDA cleared for indication of OSA with terzepatide, and then you're going to have apnea med coming out with something soon. You have options for RLS. You have just more and more options that are coming along, and so that's great for, I think, the pipeline for people to accept, like potentially accept getting that diagnosis. Because I know personally in my life, people were like, no, I'm not going to have a sleep study because I don't want to end up on CPAP. I know I'm not going to be able to tolerate CPAP. So they resist, right? And so now there's these other options that, the general public's being made aware of. And I think that's kind of people are going to be more willing to test, and just in the test. So right now I'm a regional sales manager for Zolidamar, my dream job, by the way. My life's kind of come full circle. I was part of a validation study with WatchPat back in like 2010, 2011, and that was before home sleep testing became a thing. And now I get to sell the device that I was kind of enamored with back then. And at University of Chicago, we were like an early clinical adopter to it. So we started using WatchPat 100% back in 2016. And, so being able to represent the company and product is really a dream come true. And, I know for us, like we focus on that diagnosis pathway, right? We want to get patients diagnosed. Now, we can, oftentimes that's where the bottleneck is, right? Is, patients are waiting to have that test done. We have different options with our devices. We also have different options with our services in which we can really, between what we have to offer holistically, there's no reason a sleep center should have any kind of wait time to have that test done. Now, what that does though, is oftentimes you shift the bottleneck, right? So instead of now that the bottleneck occurring in wait times to have a test done, now you get all these tests done. Now who's going to manage those patients, right? So it's interesting. I think I am seeing more and more, and I'm hearing about this, more and more bigger systems adopt virtual models that can hopefully help take on that patient management piece. So not only are you addressing the bottleneck for the diagnosis with, say, WatchPat, but then you have then this, these systems are bringing on these virtual models in which now that diagnosed patient is still receiving good, adequate care within follow-up, and they're setting that patient up for success for treatment and management of their treatment. So I see in the next 5 years, definitely continued growth in our space. And then we have in 2027, there's going to be coding changes that occur for home sleep testing. Not exactly sure how that will impact things right now, but there's products that are in market right now that are kind of preparing for that, like type 2 tests that give you almost like a full PSG reading that can be completed at home. And I know very little information. They don't tell us RSMs much because we have big mouths. But I'm fairly certain that we are coming up with something to be able to meet that need for the new coding changes. And just in case you guys aren't aware, or the listeners aren't aware, the proposed changes are going away from the single code of like 95806, which is like an airflow based device, or the 95800, which is a PAT device. That's what WatchPat is, 95800. It's got total sleep time. Instead, going to something like having it's like a complexity scale, right? So it'd be reimbursement would be given based off of complexity. So it'd be like low, moderate, and high complexity. And then how they're going to sort that out of what is a low complexity device based off of high complexity device, it's not really certain yet. But I think we're kind of positioning ourselves, at least I feel like we're positioning ourselves to be able to kind of be in that high complexity level as well. So, I see that as like the next 5 years is kind of like the big game changer. And then, if you're looking beyond that, I have no idea. Like if you would ask me 10 years ago, what would be, it's funny because this was talked about at the beginning. Like, there's things that never change, right? But then there's been things that have changed quite a bit in the last 10 years. And I think the big one, right, the big disruptor for us in the last 10 years has been home sleep testing. So who knows, 10 years from now, maybe no diagnostic test is needed. Maybe it's done through AI. Maybe it's done through a questionnaire. Maybe it's done through a urine sample. Who knows? I that's why I like to just stay in today and just kind of focus and, like do my best. Because who knows?
Well, I love your answer.
Do you guys have any thoughts on that question? I'd be curious to know what you guys think on that.
What do you think in 5 years?
I think the sleep navigator is going to become with some extra education or even through the new Society of Behavioral Sleep Medicine exam, the credential sleep health navigator that's supposed to be coming out this year. We're going to be like APPs in a way because of the bottleneck with the physician practices. I think there's no reason why someone with a little extra education, however they do it, or an extra exam or something, cannot see the simple obstructive sleep apnea patients. And then the more complicated ones, they see the physician. There's just so much knowledge, and I just think our role is going to be much more different if we choose to do that. That's my thought of it.
Well, for me, I see us in the hospital. I truly do. I see the implementation, and it'll be hardwired into the hospital because patients are expressing the need for sleep now in the hospital. It used to be just normal. You see the staff being, after COVID, we're still repairing from that, and they're exhausted. And so just having that change where it's hardwired, where they're going to heal, where they should be healing, but they're not. Implementing that and making it hardwired, and then all of it just goes right into outpatient, and the doctors are screening, and it's part of, as Christina Weaver would say, it's a vital sign. So they're going to ask you about your sleep, they're going to check your pressure, they're going to check your temperature, and all that's going to be happening at one time. So I do see that happening with my help in about 5 years, because I'm not going to let go, because it's time. We've been waiting. Our patients are suffering. Staff are just burning out for no reason because nobody's checking on them and making sure they're okay. Leadership is pushing people to the point that, they're not even doing their job. They're pushing everything on everybody else. So I just want to, I want it to be hardwired in everything that is health. So with my help, 5 years, we got some change happening.
I hope you guys are right. I think the work you guys are doing is very, very important. I think that I hope to see the day where every big system has a sleep navigation program in it. I think that the the current workflows and the kind of siloed approach with things is just not doesn't work. And I've been following the work you guys have been doing in Massey as well for some time now, and I'm just impressed. And I always kind of scratch my head and I think, why the case that's made, it's like, why isn't this everywhere? And I get it. There's like the bureaucracy that kind of is the block, but like, I mean, it just seems to be a no-brainer. And you guys bring the receipts. It's like you have you're what you've done at Wellstar, and like that, to look at that program and to use it as a model for every other system out there. It just seems to be a no-brainer. But I'm sure, I'm well aware that there's a lot of challenges that are in front of you guys. But I'm cheering you on and hoping for the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I think one of the issues is also that in sleep we have been, like you said, the silo, and most people have been on nights forever. You have to wait till somebody die to get on days, or somebody retire to get on days, so you have a lot of techs that have been in that, and their mindset is just that. And then you don't have the opportunity, like every other field has a ladder. If you go into nursing, you can branch out. You go to respiratory, you can even branch out there. But sleep is like your RPSGT, and then you get the CCSH, and then they're looking at you like, so what do I do with this? Like you said, it was for us, those of us who did it. It was like, oh my God, this is something great for us. But then there was nothing there to say, what am I supposed to do with this? And there was nothing put in place. So that's why it's so important for us, because we've watched it for over 6-7 years now. Like, okay, what are we doing here? What are we doing? What are we going to do for these people? Because we got a lot of seasoned people that have so much to give. and they're like, what am I supposed to do? And then some of them are like, I ain't trying to take another test, you know. You're not gonna make me sit, and they say it's hard. And I had one tell me they were asking me doctor questions. I'm like, no, they were asking critical thinking questions, and that's the difference between working nights. There is some, critical thinking, but you're gonna have to go into a whole nother environment, and then you're gonna have to play nice with other people because you'll be working not just by yourself anymore. So I think that just trying to change that mindset and show them that there is something else out there will make a significant difference in the way we're going.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, want to say that's it, Kelly? Want me to stop it? Okay, we're gonna
Yes,
stop
thanks,
the
Kevin.
yeah, let me stop the recording. Thank you, thank you, thank you.